Presiding Officer. Can I join others in, first of all, paying tribute to Henry Wooga, a Holocaust survivor who very powerfully shared his own story, the stories of others, and always campaigned against anti-Semitism. And we send our best wishes to his friends, family and the wider Jewish community. We owe it to Henry and his entire generation to make sure we share their stories and always strive for both peace and strive for a world free of prejudice and hate. Can I also join the First Minister in congratulating Ron Gething on his election, another historic first, the first ever black leader of a nation in Europe as the First Minister of Wales, and send our best wishes to his predecessor, Mark Drakeford. Presiding Officer, this morning a damning report by the Royal College of Pediatric and Child Health has warned of the catastrophic consequences of this government's failure. In paediatrics alone, over 10,000 children are waiting for the medical care they need. 50% of them have been waiting for more than the legal 12 weeks. So how does the First Minister respond to one of the leading paediatric consultants in the country, Dr. Mary Stark, who said, if you miss the right window to treat a child or wait too long, the consequences can be irreversible, and that this is a clear failure to prioritise the health and well-being of our children?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, first and foremost, I would take the report from the Royal College extremely seriously indeed, and of course we'll be examining and are examining that report in detail. As ever, of course, it is important for me to provide some context of why we're seeing such high numbers of young people, young children, waiting. The undeniable reason for that significant increase is undoubtedly the global pandemic, hence why we've seen those significant increases in paediatric waits right across the UK and England and in Wales, and of course here in Scotland too. Anas Sarwar is right, of course, and the Royal College are right to raise the concerns around this issue. So let me try to give some assurances that we are focusing on tackling these far too long waits in paediatrics, just as by way of some examples. We know that there's two main paediatric specialities, paediatrics and paediatric surgery. If I take the data from April 23 to the end of the calendar year, December 23, the paediatric new outpatient list reduced by 21%, waits over 52 weeks reduced by 12%, and waits over 78 weeks reduced by 31%, and waits over 2 years were completely eradicated. If I take the position over the 2 years, December 21 to December 2023, and look at paediatric surgery, the new outpatient list for paediatric surgery reduced by 35%, waits of over 52% reduced by 84%, over 78 weeks reduced by 95%. The purpose of reiterating these statistics, and we know that, of course, behind each of these statistics is a young child who's waiting too long for surgery, is to show that there are improvements, we are moving in the right direction. What, of course, makes the recovery of the NHS far more difficult is the fact that, of course, we're receiving cuts from the Conservatives on our budget, £500 million over 2 years, £1.3 billion in terms of our capital. We are, of course, investing in our NHS despite those cuts. It would be helpful to know from Anas Sarwar that if there is an incoming Labour government, they would immediately reverse those Conservative cuts, because it impedes our ability in order to invest in the NHS's recovery, which of course is much needed for our children, our young people, as well as our adults too.
Anas Sarwar.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. The First Minister knows that this problem predates the pandemic, that the report makes clear 11 years of decline, every day of which there has been an SNP government. And he also knows that Labour is going to invest more in the National Health Service, and we do want to bring down waiting lists. But he has to take responsibility for his government's actions, not look to blame somebody else all the time. The crisis in children's health goes further than even this report warns. Across our NHS, whether in CAMS services or in other specialisms, children face unacceptable waits that have left them distressed and in pain. One mum, Amy, has told me the struggles faced by her 3-year-old son, Cody. Cody has been repeatedly diagnosed with tonsillitis, and his enlarged tonsils obstruct over 75% of his airway, making it difficult to eat, drink and even breathe. She's told me that she has to lie awake next to him during the night because his breathing stops, and she has to nudge him to restart his breathing again. She's had to fight to get Cody referred to a specialist, but has been told that an urgent referral for treatment will take 3 years. Amy has had to make the difficult decision to go private borrowing almost £5,000 from her family. Why is he and his government failing Amy, Cody and so many families like theirs?
First Minister.
Presiding Officer, I'm obviously more than happy to look at the case that is referenced by Anas Sarwar in terms of Cody's case, and indeed any other case that a member raises. We're happy to explore with the Health Board in terms of what more can be done. It sounds like a horrifically long wait that we don't want any parent to have to endure. The point I make to Anas Sarwar is, of course, that there is progress being made. I've given him a range of details around how that progress is being made in relation to paediatric surgery, which is relevant to his question, but we're also making sure that we're investing in the workforce. So paediatric specialty consultants, we've increased their numbers by 15% in the last 5 years, by 64% in the last 10 years. When we look at qualified paediatric nurses, the workforce has increased by 11% in the last 5 years. And since 2014, we've also invested in the recruitment of an additional 500 health visitors and 200 extra school nurses, again, which undoubtedly help with young people and children's health and well-being. So I don't take lightly at all the issues that Anas Sarwar raises about the long waits that parents and the children are having to suffer. In Anas Sarwar's initial response, of course, he didn't answer the question that I asked, which was that, of course, would an incoming Labour government, potentially incoming Labour government, immediately reverse the £1.3 billion cut, which is making an impact in terms of our healthcare provision. If he could give that confirmation, then we may be able to plan further ahead in terms of the further investment we're able to make, because it's only through record investment in the NHS are we going to be able to recover our national health services for children and young people.
Honestly, Presiding Officer, after 17 years of this SNP government wanting to ask questions about a party in opposition rather than talking about their own record and failing children across the country just shows how out of depth this Finance Minister is. All those lists, all those excuses mean nothing to Amy, mean nothing to Cody and mean nothing to the thousands of families that his government is failing every single day. Because he simply does not get it. In every area of responsibility for this SNP government, children are being failed with catastrophic consequences. After 17 years of this SNP government, 240,000 children are living in poverty, over 10,000 children waiting for paediatric medical care, over 9,500 children turned away from mental health services last year. I suggest the Deputy First Minister listen to the consequences for her constituents rather than trying to heckle what's happening to children across this country. And for those that were referred, over 5,500 children are waiting to get mental health support. And now nearly a third of pupils in Scotland are persistently absent from school, in some areas as high as 50%. Almost 40% of pupils now need additional support. At the same time, this SNP government has cut 400 ASN posts in the last decade. Isn't it clear that Humza Yousaf and every single member of this SNP government are failing Scotland's children?
First Minister.
No, I don't agree with that, Presiding Officer. I thought it was a pretty reasonable question, which obviously Anas Sarwar is unable to answer, and he'll want to maybe be honest with people about the answer. He was unable to answer a very simple question, that if there is an incoming Labour government, will they immediately reverse the Tory cut to Scotland's budget? The fact that he was unable to answer the question demonstrates that he either does not know the answer, Presiding Officer, or he is not being honest with the people of Scotland. And what I would say to Anas Sarwar is that it's fundamentally important in all of the areas of public service that we invest. That's why this government took the decision to make sure we prioritise our public services. That's why we gave an increase to the National Health Service, made sure there was an increase to education services, made there was an increase to social security. All of these issues incredibly important for our children and young people. That is why, of course, the estimates show that 100,000 children in Scotland will be lifted out of poverty because of our actions. That's why, of course, more young people in this country are going to university from areas of higher deprivation because of our investment. That's why more young people, we have record young people going into positive destinations because of our investment in education, early learning and childcare, presiding officer.
Briefly, First Minister.
And that is why, of course, it is imperative throughout all of these challenges that governments and political parties make a decision. Do they invest in public services?
Thank you, First Minister. We must move on to the next question. First Minister. First Minister. First Minister. I have asked that you conclude your question. I am now moving on to the next question. That you conclude your response.